My feet were the color of old wax. Not every day, but enough days that I started checking them the moment I sat down in the morning. A kind of purplish gray at the toes that faded up the ankle, cold to the touch even in July. My wife noticed before I admitted it to myself. She'd hold my foot in her hands at night and say nothing, which was worse than if she'd said something. I'm 83 years old. I've had elevated blood sugar for 16 years, and for the first 10 of those years I assumed what was happening to my feet and legs was simply the cost of getting older with that diagnosis. The cold, the heaviness, the evenings when my calves felt like they'd been filled with something dense and slow. The way my legs looked by 4 in the afternoon, swollen enough that the sock lines stayed pressed into my skin for an hour after I took them off. I told my doctor. He noted it. He checked my circulation with the standard tests. He adjusted my medication. He told me to stay active. Stay active, that's what he said. And I want to be fair to him. He meant it, and it wasn't wrong. But what he didn't have time to tell me, what the 8 minutes of an appointment simply cannot contain, is the specific mechanism behind why movement works for circulation in a diabetic leg. Not general movement, not a walk to the mailbox once a day. A specific kind of movement, done at specific points in the day, that activates a system inside your leg muscles that most people, including most people who've been managing blood sugar for a decade or more, have never heard of. When I finally understood what that system was, I was angry. Not at my doctor, at the gap, at the fact that this mechanism has been understood in research for years and it still doesn't make it from the journal to the appointment room to the patient sitting across the desk wondering why his feet look like old wax in July. I'm going to close that gap for you today. But before I do, drop your fasting blood sugar number in the comments right now. Just the number. And if your legs or feet are part of why you're watching this, the heaviness, the swelling, the coldness, the color, add the word legs. Because what I'm about to explain lands very differently depending on whether this is a general interest or a daily reality. I read every one of those comments. Here's the mechanism your doctor knows but didn't have time to explain. When blood sugar stays elevated over months and years, it does something specific to the small blood vessels in your legs. The process is called glycation, glucose molecules attaching to proteins in vessel walls, the way rust forms on metal that's been left wet too long. The vessel walls thicken. They lose flexibility. The capillaries that are supposed to feed your peripheral nerves and your lower leg muscle tissue with oxygen and nutrients start to narrow from the inside. At the same time, the valves inside your leg veins, the tiny one-way doors that are supposed to push blood back up toward the heart, begin to lose efficiency. In a healthy leg, your calf muscle contracts every time you take a step, squeezing the veins, forcing blood upward. It's called the venous muscle pump. It's as important to your leg circulation as your heart is. But when you sit for long hours, when you're less active than you used to be, when your calf muscle has lost some of its mass from years of blood sugar damage, that pump weakens. Blood pools in the lower leg. Fluid leaks into surrounding tissue. The ankles swell. The skin changes color. The nerves, already compromised by glycation, sit in an inflammatory environment that makes everything worse. Two problems running simultaneously. The vessels narrowed from the inside by glycation. The pump weakened from the outside by inactivity and muscle loss. Your medication addresses neither of those directly. It works on your liver. It works on your insulin receptors. It does not reach into your calf muscle and restore the pump. It does not reverse the stiffness in your capillary walls. That's the gap. And that's exactly where the habit I want to show you today works. If your feet burn at night, or go numb, or feel cold no matter how many socks you wear, please don't ignore it. I almost did, and I'm 80 years old. For years I told myself it was just age, the tingling, the heaviness in my legs climbing the stairs. But it wasn't age. It was my blood sugar quietly damaging the nerves and the circulation in my legs, and almost nobody warned me in time. If you let it keep going, those little signals turn into something you can't undo. I wasn't willing to lose my feet or my independence. So I started doing one thing every single day to help support healthy blood sugar and protect my legs. I'll show you exactly what in this video. And if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. Habit takes less than 5 minutes. You can do it sitting in the chair you're in right now. You don't need shoes, you don't need equipment, you don't need to be able to walk a mile or get up and down from the floor. If you can move your feet and your ankles, you can do this. It's a sequence of 2 movements, ankle circles and calf raises. Done together, done at the right points in the day, they do something that walking alone doesn't reliably do, especially for someone who is sitting for long periods, or whose calf muscle has weakened enough that ordinary walking no longer generates the pump pressure it once did. Here's what happens inside the leg when you do them. The ankle circle, a slow, full rotation of the foot 10 times in each direction, contracts and releases the deep muscles surrounding the ankle joint. Those muscles press directly against the tibial veins, the major return vessels running up the inside of the lower leg. Each contraction is a small push. Each release is a small pull. 10 circles each direction is 20 pumping actions on those veins before you've stood up from your chair. Research in vascular physiology has consistently shown that even passive compression and release of the calf and ankle region, the kind that happens during simple foot movement, meaningfully improves venous return velocity in people with compromised lower limb circulation. The pump doesn't require walking, it requires contraction. Sitting contraction counts. Then the calf raise. Both feet flat on the floor, you rise onto your toes as high as you comfortably can and lower slowly. 10 repetitions. The gastrocnemius, the large calf muscle, is the primary engine of the venous muscle pump. When it contracts during a calf raise, it generates the same squeezing force on the deep leg veins that a walking step does, sometimes more because you're isolating the movement rather than distributing it across a full stride. But there's a second mechanism in the calf raise that most people don't connect to blood sugar. And this is the part that stopped me when I first read the research. Your calf muscle is one of the largest glucose-consuming tissues in your lower body. When it contracts, even in a seated calf raise, it activates a glucose transporter called GLUT4. GLUT4 is remarkable because it does not require insulin to work. It is activated purely by muscle contraction. Your insulin resistance, however severe, does not block it. The muscle moves, GLUT4 activates, glucose moves from your bloodstream directly into muscle tissue. Studies have shown that this mechanism, muscle contraction activating GLUT4 independent of insulin, can reduce post-meal blood glucose meaningfully, and that the effect is most pronounced in the muscles being used, which means calf raises after a meal are pulling excess glucose out of your circulation specifically through the same tissue that needs better circulation in the first place. The pump improves the circulation. The improved circulation feeds the muscle. The muscle, working, clears the glucose that was thickening the blood and accelerating vessel damage. It's a closed loop, and you can start it from a chair. I do this sequence 3 times a day, once in the morning before I get up from the breakfast table, once after lunch while I'm still sitting, once after dinner, same way. Each session is about 4 minutes, 12 minutes total across the day. A man wrote to me through this channel about 2 months ago. He's 81, lives in Tennessee, been diabetic for 19 years. He described his legs exactly the way I used to describe mine. The sock lines, the color in the afternoon, the stiffness getting up from a chair after sitting for an hour. He'd been told to walk more, but his knees made distance walking painful, so he'd mostly stopped and assumed that was that. He started the seated sequence, ankle circles, calf raises, 3 times a day after meals. He wrote back 6 weeks later. He was careful how he said it. He didn't make claims. But what he described was that the afternoon swelling had changed, that his legs felt less dense when he stood up, that the sock lines were lighter, not gone, lighter, and that his morning fasting number, which he checks daily, had dropped enough that his doctor asked what he'd changed. He told his doctor about the sequence. His doctor said it made sense. Of course it made sense. The mechanism is real. The doctor just hadn't thought to prescribe it because the system doesn't have a prescription pad for ankle circles. Now I want to say something that I think is the most important thing in this video, and it's not about the habit itself. It's about timing. The calf muscle pump and the GLUT4 mechanism are most powerful in the hour after a meal. That's the window when glucose is actively entering your bloodstream from food. That's when your blood is at its thickest with sugar. That's when vessel damage from glycation is accelerating fastest. If you do the sequence in that window, sitting at the table after breakfast, after lunch, after dinner, you are intervening at the exact moment the problem is most active. If you do it mid-morning or mid-afternoon when your glucose is already settling, you get some benefit, but you're arriving after the peak. 3 times a day, after meals, 4 minutes each. The timing is half the mechanism. And this habit doesn't work in isolation any more than any single thing does. Here's how I've built it into a larger system, because the system is what produces consistent results over weeks and months. I start every morning with protein first. Eggs before anything else. Protein at the first meal activates a hormone called GLP-1 that slows the rate at which glucose enters the bloodstream from everything that follows. It gives the GLUT4 mechanism in my calf muscles a slower, more manageable glucose load to work with. The two work together. I eat starches cooled, rice, potatoes, lentils cooked the night before and eaten cold or at room temperature. Cooling converts the starch into a form the small intestine cannot rapidly digest, flattening the glucose curve further. Less spike means less glycation pressure on the vessels the pump is trying to feed. And I sleep in a room set to 66 degrees, because overnight the cortisol that rises to prepare your body for waking signals the liver to release stored glucose into the blood. A cool room supports deeper sleep, and deeper sleep keeps that cortisol curve lower. Your fasting number in the morning reflects what happened between midnight and 6 a.m. as much as it reflects what you ate the night before. The seated sequence is the piece most people are missing, but it works best when the rest of the system is running underneath it. I want you to think about something for a moment, and I want you to take it seriously. Think about the people your age who still move the way they want to move, who sit down in a restaurant chair and get back up without a production, who walk through a parking lot without calculating how far away they parked, who stand at a kitchen counter for 20 minutes making dinner and don't need to sit down halfway through. And think about the ones who can't do those things anymore, the ones whose world has quietly contracted around them. Smaller distances, shorter days, more help needed for things that used to be automatic. What separated them? I've been watching this for 30 years, and I'll tell you what I believe. It wasn't luck. It wasn't entirely genetics. It was whether they paid attention to the quiet signals early enough to answer them. The sock lines that stayed too long, the color at the toes in July, the legs that needed a minute before they were willing to cooperate. Those aren't decorative complaints. Those are your body telling you that the pump is weakening and the vessels are narrowing and the window to respond is still open, but it is not open indefinitely. You're watching this video. That means you're paying attention. That means the window is still open. Don't leave it open too long. If you made it this far, you already understand more about your own legs than most people your age ever will. That matters. You know now that the burning, the numbness, the cold feet, they trace back to one thing: blood sugar slowly working against your nerves and circulation. And you know the goal isn't a miracle. It's protecting your ability to stand, to walk, to stay independent. That's why, alongside everything I showed you today, I use a simple daily support to help keep my blood sugar in a healthy range, so my legs keep carrying me where I want to go. I put the free presentation in the description below. Go watch it. And as always, keep working with your doctor. This supports your routine. It doesn't replace it. If you want support that goes deeper than food and movement alone, something built around the same mechanisms this video has been about, the vascular environment, the nerve tissue, the glucose metabolism that drives all of it, designed to work alongside your doctor's plan, not instead of it, there's a link below this video. I'm not going to oversell it. What I'll say is that I looked for a long time before I found something I felt I could honestly point to. And when I found it, I wanted to make it available to the people watching this channel who are serious about closing the gaps that 8-minute appointments can't close. Here's what I want you to do tonight. After dinner, before you leave the table, do 10 ankle circles in each direction. Then 10 slow calf raises with both feet. That's it. 2 minutes. See how your legs feel when you stand up compared to how they usually feel. Not a dramatic test, just a first data point. Tomorrow morning, do it again at breakfast. After lunch, again. 3 sessions, 4 minutes each. Do that for 1 week and tell me what you notice. And drop legs in the comments if what I described today, the color, the swelling, the heaviness, the sock lines, is something you're living with right now. I want to know how many of you are dealing with this without an explanation for why it's happening. You have one now.